Today we're talking all about hashtags, those little symbols that have been a big part of Instagram strategy for years. But lately there's been a lot of chatter about hashtags losing their power, especially recently with Instagram making some big changes. So, are hashtags still worth the effort? What do these changes mean for your small business, and how can you use hashtags effectively going forward? Don't worry, I've got all the answers in this episode, plus my top tips to make sure you're using them the smart way without wasting your precious time. But before I dive into all of that, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to tune in to Show Up and Be Heard. The podcast exists to help women like you simplify your business and your life so that you can stop feeling so overwhelmed. I am your host, Becci McAvoy, owner and founder of Be Heard Socials and the award-winning Boss Your Socials Club membership, and I specialise in content strategy and organic growth on social media. If you want to cut through the noise and BS and get practical, actionable advice tailored specifically to make social media marketing accessible and easy to understand, or if you want to be part of a supportive community where women entrepreneurs can feel connected and inspired to achieve their dreams, then keep listening because you are in the right place. To be the first to find out when new episodes go live and to get more tips like the ones you hear in this podcast, make sure you join my email community through the link in the show notes. Right then, go grab a brew or a Ribena if you're a bit of a weirdo like me who doesn't do hot drinks, and let's dive in. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What are hashtags and why have they been such a big deal on Instagram? Well, a hashtag is essentially a word or phrase that's preceded by the hashtag symbol on your keyboard. It's a way of tagging your content so that it can be found and grouped with similar posts. For example, if you are a baker and you use hashtag easy baking tips, your post could appear alongside other posts using that hashtag, which helps people who are interested in getting started with baking to discover your content. Now, in the past, hashtags were one of the best ways to boost your visibility on Instagram. They acted like little road signs, I guess, pointing people towards your content. So by using relevant hashtags, you could get your posts in front of new audiences who might not already follow you. And it could help you grow your account, increase your engagement, and ultimately drive sales or interest in your business. So obviously everybody wants that, don't they? And obviously that's a great thing. And it's why I'm often asked about hashtags, why I'm asked a lot of questions about them. However, as Instagram's algorithms have become more advanced at understanding what content people want to see, and it really has become a lot more advanced recently and over the last few years, the role of hashtags has shifted slightly. They are no longer the only way, or even the main way, actually, that your content gets discovered. So, what is new with hashtags on Instagram? Well, there was an announcement, I don't know if it was this week or last week actually, but basically there's been a lot of content from people saying that Instagram hashtags have changed. So yeah, there's been lots of changes over the last year or so, but the most recent one is that you can no longer follow hashtags. So you might have seen this either pop up. It came as like a little announcement from Instagram, like it popped up on your screen, or you might have seen someone sharing content around the fact that you can no longer follow hashtags. So that's the most recent change. Like I said, there's been a few. I won't go into all of them because that is the most recent one. It's literally happened in the last week or so. So what that means is that you used to be able to follow hashtags. You used to be able to choose a hashtag that you were interested in. For example, say it was hashtag women in business. It might be that you want to see content around that. So you followed the hashtag, and posts under that hashtag, I feel like I'm saying the word hashtag a lot, would show up in your feed. So by following it, it's a bit like following a person or a business. You are choosing to see that content, to have it show up in your feed as well as the other areas that would show up. But that is what's changed this week. You can no longer do that. So if you were following hashtags, and I follow quite a few, if they haven't already, they are going to be vanishing from your feed. You won't see that anymore. It just won't pop up. So why have Instagram done this? Well, I believe in a lot of the stuff that I've read around this is that it's a bid to stop the spam. And I think actually that's one of the reasons that hashtags don't hold the weight that maybe they used to, is because they were just prime for spam. And what you'd find is spammers, because let's call them what they are, were using trending hashtags to push irrelevant content that had nothing to do with what they were posting. And I guess Instagram has maybe just decided, now that it has all these other ways that content can be found, that it's easier to remove the follow feature rather than constantly fight the spam battle, because I guess really you're never going to be able to completely stop that. That said, this change is about stopping people, I believe, from actively choosing to have hashtag content show up in their feed. It doesn't mean that hashtags are disappearing completely, or at least it doesn't mean that yet. So Instagram is still letting us use them, and Meta is still giving advice about them. So for me, they do remain part of the platform's ecosystem for now. You can still use them. They're not going away completely. This most recent change just means that you won't be able to follow them anymore. And I don't know, it hasn't gone from my feed yet. I can still see the hashtags that I follow. It's not necessarily showing up in my feed, but I guess at some point, when I go to who I'm following, the hashtags I follow will just have vanished from there, I guess. But yeah, that's the change, is that you won't be able to follow them anymore. Now, I want to talk a little bit, but before I go into any more detail about hashtags, about why you shouldn't panic about this, because I have seen a lot of panic around it. And actually, the reason that I decided to do this episode, this wasn't meant to be the one that was going out next week, but I decided to change it because I got quite a lot of questions from people in my DMs asking me what I thought about it. I got questions from my members actually, and we have been talking about it a lot in the membership. So when people DM me, I said, you know what, I'll do a podcast episode about this because I think it will help. It's clearly causing panic amongst people. We've already had these chats inside the membership. So for anybody who has invested in Bossy or Socials Club as a membership, we've already had a bit of a chat around it. But yeah, I thought it'd be helpful to do a podcast episode because I hate when I see people panicking about this kind of stuff, because it really shouldn't take up your headspace. Now, I know that changes like this can feel unsettling, especially when you don't really get social media, or you're struggling with it, or you feel like you've just got on top of it and then something else changes. And honestly, I think we'll see a lot of noise from so-called experts on social media claiming that this is the end of hashtags, or pushing unnecessary panic, or telling you exactly what you need to do about it. Now, I do get the irony that I'm doing a podcast episode about it, but one of the reasons I want to do that is to ease the panic, because you really don't need to be stressing about it. And panic might seem like an extreme word, but even if you're giving this some of your headspace at the moment, just don't worry about it. My biggest advice is this: don't stress, carry on as you are, using hashtags strategically, and carry on listening to podcasts like this that help you with that, and help you sort of get your head around it in a really condensed and concise way without you having to do a ton of research around this. And if you know other business owners, please share this episode with them as well, because if nothing else, I just want you to spend less time stressing about the changes, and find a way to know what's going on, but in a more efficient way. Because if or when anything big does come out, like an announcement from Adam Mosseri, who is the head of Instagram, I will keep my eyes peeled and I will let you know. It is my job to stay on top of these updates so that you can focus on your business without worrying about what's next. So yeah, please don't panic or don't worry, or don't stress, or just don't give this your headspace. Find the easy, concise ways from the people that you trust to get this advice. And please forward this episode on, or share this on your stories to anybody else that might need to hear it as well. Okay, so now none of us are panicking. Let's talk about what this means for small business owners. So for us small business owners, I think the takeaway for me is this, or not I think, this is what my takeaway is. Hashtags are still relevant, but they are being slowly deprioritized. So I would start to think of them as a supporting tool rather than the star of the show that they perhaps have been in the past. Instagram's algorithms, like I said, are so much better now at understanding what your content is about based on keywords, context, and user behavior. So hashtags just don't hold the same power as they once did, but they are not obsolete either. So I think we should still keep using them. I think they are helpful. They do have their place. And right now they do help us get more reach. So yeah, they are not obsolete. Don't think this is the end of hashtags, because it's absolutely not. At least it's not right now. So what I also want to spend some time in this episode talking about is some practical stuff, some top tips for using hashtags effectively. So number one, and this is really front and center for me, and I will probably in all my other tips come back to this point as well, because it's so important, is to stay relevant. So always use hashtags that are directly related to your post. Irrelevant hashtags can cause confusion for Instagram's algorithm, and it may even harm your reach. Adam Mosseri has previously come out. So like I said, he's the head of Instagram, if you hear me talking about him again, but he has previously come out and said that Instagram's algorithm has the ability to scan your posts because they do want to reduce the spam. As much as people moan about seeing content they don't want to see and all that kind of stuff, Instagram is actually trying to reduce the spam and show you what you want to see, because their main goal is to keep you on the app for as long as possible. So of course they're going to want to show you what you want to see or what they think you want to see. And he has said that Instagram's algorithm has the ability to scan a post, and if the hashtags that you're using aren't relevant to what you're talking about in your caption or what your image is about, it will rank your content lower because it will mark it as spam. So stay relevant. Only use hashtags that are directly related to what you are talking about in the post that you are talking, like in the post that you are posting, in the post that you are adding those hashtags to. So that is my absolute number one tip. And like I said, I'm probably going to reference this in some of my other tips as well. So next tip, use a mix of sizes. Include a variety of hashtags, some smaller niche ones with less competition, and some larger, more popular ones for broader reach. Don't use the massive hashtags. So for example, if you are somebody who talks a lot about mental health, if you do hashtag mental health, that is likely to have millions, if not billions, of posts attached to it. And the competition is just so high that if most of your focus is on organic content, you're just not going to get there. So use a mix of hashtags, but try and not use the massive ones. So do pay attention to how many, which it shows you on Instagram when you bring it up, to how many posts there are in that area. And use some of the lower ones. And when I say lower ones, I'm talking about, it can be the 10s, 20s, 30s, 50s, 100,000, because they are a good way to be seen. But as soon as you're going, to be honest, for me, probably above 100,000, definitely above 500,000, it just gets too much. And I think you get lost in a sea of noise. So try and keep them more relevant where you can. Now, I've said that, that's my view on that. I don't think there's any solid research out there to say the size of that you should stop posting when a hashtag gets to it, but that's kind of the guidance that I would go along. But yeah, use a mix of sizes and include a variety of hashtags. Like I said, some smaller ones that are more niche with less competition, and some larger ones but not absolutely massive ones. Okay, so my next tip is to think like your audience. So use hashtags that your ideal customer would search for. Don't focus solely on industry specific terms. Think about the broader interests of your audience too. So say, for example, I'm going to think off the top of my head here. Say, for example, you're a life coach and your industry specific terms will be things like, now, I'm saying this knowing that some people might search for this, but I'm going to say things like imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs, even possibly self-doubt. Although that actually may be self-doubt, not so much, but definitely terms like imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs, which some of your audience that you want to reach will never have heard of, because that's why they need someone like you to help them with that kind of stuff and help them with the tips and advice. What they are probably going to be searching around and thinking about is, if you've got imposter syndrome, they're going to be thinking about having a lack of confidence, or they are going to be thinking about, now this is quite a broad term as well, but probably anxiety and things like that. So think about what those things mean for them. So take your industry specific term and break down what that means for your audience, and use words like that. Think like your audience and think about the things that they are going to be searching for. So for example, another example, if you are a breathwork coach, it's not completely out the realms of possibility, but people are likely to not be searching for breathwork techniques, for example. They might be, so I'm not saying don't use that, and I'll come to a tip in a minute about how you can do that. But think about the reasons that they might need that breathwork techniques and that breathwork practice. So, for example, it could be around sleep deprivation, or it could be around low mood, or it could be around anxiety. So, think about the things that's actually affecting them. You've got the solution, but think about those sort of pain points, we talk about it in marketing terms, that they will be searching for to try and find an answer to. So, yeah, think like your audience. Now, at this point, I've got some more tips, but I do just want to say, please know that some of these tips that I'm giving, in fact, most of these tips that I'm giving you, are all singing, all dancing advice. You don't need to be doing all of this. It's what you've got the time for. And I'll come to that in a minute. I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I get to the end of the tips. But I do want to say this at this point. If you've got to this point in the podcast and you're like, oh my goodness, I haven't got that amount of time. I just want you to know that this is the all singing, all dancing practice. So take from this what you can, even if you take one of these tips or one of these bits of advice to put into practice, and then slowly over time do some more of them, if they're still relevant, obviously, because things change a lot. But please don't think you need to do all of this. Okay, so I'm going to come back to that in a minute with some advice about how you might approach that. But I'm just going to give you the rest of my tips first, remembering that they are the all singing, all dancing approach. So another tip is to avoid overloading your post. So as it stands, you can use up to 30 hashtags, but that doesn't mean that you have to. So focus on the quality over the quantity. Going back to my first point of staying relevant. So if you can only find 5 to 6 hashtags that are highly relevant to your post, then only use those and don't worry about filling all 30 slots. So yeah, avoid overloading your post just because you feel like you can or you need to. However, if you do have the relevant hashtags and you've got 30 of them and you've got the space to use them because they are an opportunity to increase your reach. And even if it's not by the hundreds of thousands of people that you might see those Insta-worthy posts saying, oh, I used hashtags and reached 100,000 people. Even if you're getting in front of another 20, 30, 50, 100 people, that's a lot of people. Like if that amount of people walked into my office right now, they would be flowing out the door. So yeah, don't beat yourself up if they're not reaching those Insta-worthy numbers. If you're getting in front of more people, that's excellent news. That's always excellent news. So use the 30 if you can get relevant ones, but make sure they are relevant. Don't overload your post just for the sake of it. Okay. So my next tip is to post first and perfect later. And now this will be a chance for me to actually go into a bit of detail about ways that I might do this, because what I really want you to remember above all else from this episode is that posting your content is more important than perfecting your hashtags. So don't let not knowing what hashtags to use hold you back from hitting publish on your post or getting that content out there, or even doing other jobs in your business. So block out some time to research hashtags that work for you if you can, but don't prioritize this over actually sharing content. Hashtags don't hold the same weight that they used to, and it is more important that you are getting your message out there than not because you're waiting to do your hashtag research. So when we're talking about hashtag research, this is some tips and advice I would give around that. I would block out half a day or maybe even a day to just brainstorm what to think like your audience, to think about the kind of thing they'll be searching for. And you can use this in the keywords in your post, which I think arguably is becoming more important than the hashtags, but they both hold their place. So keywords in your post is what will help your post rank if people are using Instagram and other social media platforms like search engines. So they might go into a search bar and search for tips to improve my confidence, if we go back to that example for earlier. So yeah, block out some time, an hour or a couple of hours if you can, or like I said, half a day or a day, depending on how thoroughly you want to do it. And first things first, think like your audience. Brainstorm the kind of things they're going to be searching for and the kind of things that your content will help them with. Then what I would say is that you can use, like I said, 25 to 30, you can use 30 hashtags. What I'm about to say is that what I would suggest doing is thinking about the things that you talk about all the time. So for me, for example, a lot of the time, 99% of the time, I'm going to be talking about social media tips and advice. So I can have some core hashtags. So I could choose 15 to 20 of them. For example, Instagram growth tips, or hashtag content ideas. I'd imagine that will be quite a big hashtag, but the kind of things that I talk about all the time, and I can have them as my core hashtags. And then what I do is put them in a task in Asana, and I copy them in there. Because I pay for Asana, when I'm creating my posts and the way that I do my content, it means it automatically comes up in the task that I'm opening in Asana. But if you're using the free version, have them saved in a task in Asana or Trello or whatever else you use. What I would say is don't save them in a notepad, because I want you to be able to copy and paste them. So do those 15, 20 hashtags that's around content that you're talking about all the time. And then list out the things that you've brainstormed earlier around the way that your audience thinks and what you're going to be talking about that goes deeper into what your post is about. So, for example, I'm going to come back to that life coach example just because we spoke about it earlier. You're not always going to be talking about imposter syndrome, but you are going to be talking about it possibly quite a lot. So have 5 to 10 hashtags that are specifically around imposter syndrome and copy them into your Asana task. 5 to 10 hashtags that are around limiting beliefs, remembering thinking like your audience thinks, and copy them into your Asana tasks. And then what you can do when you come to create your content, rather than scrambling around and trying to write out the hashtags every time, is you can copy and paste your core 15 to 20 hashtags, and then you can copy and paste the more specific niche ones that you've done for 5 to 10 of them. And then that's your 30 hashtags. Now, you're not always going to be posting that. So, for example, your core hashtags you will be using 90% of the time, for example. But I also talk on my social media about, I share a lot of personal stuff. I share my personal journey. I share my fitness journey. So if I was doing that, it's remembering to come back to staying relevant. If I'm posting about my fitness journey, I don't want to put in my core hashtags of Instagram growth tips and whatever it might be, like stuff like that. So basically you can pick and choose. You can come in and you can make sure it's relevant. You've done that research. You've copied and pasted it into Asana or Trello or a Word document or a notes document on your phone even, that you can just copy and paste it over from. Because if you can block out a couple of hours to do this, or half a day or a day, it's a lot of time and it takes a lot of work. But once you've done it, you can just come back and copy and paste it. And then I have a reminder in my Asana that once a quarter, I just go back and scan over them, make sure they're still relevant, make sure it's what I'm still talking about, that my services haven't changed, or the topics that I'm doing haven't changed. And I go back and do a little bit of research again. So that sounds like a lot. So I'm just going to take a breath. And then I am going to say, remember, this is all singing, all dancing. That's just the way that you could approach hashtag research, so that once you've done it and you've blocked out that time to do it, when you come to create your content, you can just copy and paste those hashtags over. However, remember that post first, perfect later. Done is better than perfect. So do not wait until you've got the time, because you might never have the time to do this hashtag research, and that is okay. I am giving you permission to say that's okay. If you don't ever have the time to do that hashtag research, don't worry about it. Maybe you won't reach as many people, but you will still reach people. Even if you're writing your captions well and you're including keywords, that will help you get found. And like I've said earlier, I do believe the weight of hashtags are being deprioritized. So do it if you can, but if you can't, do not beat yourself up about it. I just wanted to give you some tips and advice of how to do it if you are able to. Okay, so my final tip that I'm going to give in this episode is to use them whilst you can, because at the end of the day, Instagram still allows hashtags. So if you can use them, do, because they are still a way to be found. They are still a way to increase your reach. While their impact has decreased and you're not going to be able to follow them anymore, for example, they can still help your content reach new audiences. So if you can, take advantage of this tool whilst it's available to you, because it will get you in front of people. So to wrap this all up, hashtags are still a useful tool, but their role is definitely evolving. I think that we're seeing a shift towards keywords being more important, but hashtags aren't going anywhere just yet. So take some of the tips, if you can, if you've got the time, that I've shared today, and get your hashtag strategy right for you and for your content. But the most important thing is to keep showing up. Do not let algorithm changes or hashtag debates or advice from the noisy experts that are out there hold you back from posting and connecting with your audience, because that is above all, the most important thing you can do. If you're not getting your content out there, if you are letting this stuff hold you back, then people aren't seeing your content at all. So it doesn't really matter what the hashtags are doing for you. So the most important thing in the spirit of show up and be heard is to keep showing up and get that content out there. And don't think you're less than because you're not using hashtags or you haven't dedicated time to doing hashtag research. Just if you can, do. Also, remember that Instagram is constantly evolving. Hashtags might look very different in another 6 months. They might look different in a week or so, the way that Instagram can come out of changes sometimes. I really hope they don't. I'm recording this on the Wednesday before the episode comes out. And I would really, really like if we can all manifest for me that nothing has changed. You're not going to be able to manifest for me because I'm doing it in the moment. But I am going to manifest that nothing changes between now and this episode coming out. So do remember that Instagram is constantly evolving. Hashtags might look different. They might disappear completely. Who knows? This advice that I've given you today is up to date as of November 2024, mid-November 2024, because that's the point I'm recording it. But keep tuning in because, like I said earlier, it is my job to stay on top of these changes so that you don't have to. So whether that's by listening to the podcast, joining my email list. In fact, joining my email list is probably one of the best ways to stay most up to date because that is where I get the content out first. Obviously, like I've recorded this podcast, but it's not going to come out until the following Tuesday. So yeah, join my email list to get the updates. Come follow me over on social media. I share all this stuff in my stories, on my feed, in my email list, on the podcast. Don't waste your time trying to get your head around it, trying to do the research, trying to just figure out what on earth is going on. Leave it to someone you trust, which I hope is me. I do consider myself as an expert. I spend a lot of time reading stuff and listening to stuff about social media changes. So whilst it's constantly evolving, don't stress about it. Just listen to the people that you trust. And I really hope for you, that is me. And please, like I said earlier, if you think anybody else would benefit from listening to this podcast episode and hearing this advice, please share it with them. Please share it on your stories. Please share it on your social media platforms, because I would love for it to reach as many people as possible. And I think one of the reasons I'd love for it to reach as many people as possible is obviously I want to get it out there. But the stuff I said around not panicking and basically giving you permission to not freak out every time Instagram makes a change or you hear a certain point of view from a big name on Instagram. I just want to get that message across. Please don't stress. You really don't have to. So I really hope this episode has been helpful. And I look forward to hearing all your thoughts about it. Come drop in and give me a message and let me know what you think. Thank you so much for listening to Show Up and Be Heard. But please don't go without telling me your name. I genuinely love meeting new people and making new connections. So if you don't already, I'd love it if you'd come find me on Instagram, LinkedIn or Facebook and drop me a message to say hello and let me know what you thought of the episode. The link to all my socials are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode or found it useful, then I'd really appreciate it if you could take just a few minutes to give it a review on whatever platform you are listening on, because every one I get really does make me do a little squeal and a big happy dance. Finally, more than anything else, please always remember, realizing that you're not actually meant to do this stuff alone is the first step to making it easier. So I'll see you next time.